Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Dan Banchero Show, only on YouTube. I'm your host, and still a major league piece of work, Dan Banchero, coming live from Santa Rosa. Miss Helen's asleep, Mom's asleep. We had an overwhelmingly large dinner at the Olive Garden tonight. Service was terrible, but I was happy. Ate too much as usual, but we're working on that. I haven't mastered myself. In fact, I would master myself in many areas, but many of you already know that. So, hope you're all having a great beginning to the fall season. Should be winter time almost any day now, but I know we got daylight savings coming up. So, I finally got around to reflecting on 2002 when I moved back to Millbrae after several years of going around different cities and checking out Colma for a little bit and living in San Bruno for several years. And this stint in Millbrae was short-lived for many reasons that I'll get into. But it was a fun year. There were some consequences, but I overall had a lot of fun as a young 23-year-old man. So I was thinking about moving out of the Colma house, an opportunity to move back to Millbrae and be closer to work. But there were some certain things that transpired to influence that. I remember watching the Royal Rumble, drinking heavily, and Triple H came back from an injury that year, and he was obviously going to win it, as far as I'm concerned. And my boy Ric Flair had a street fight with Vince McMahon, and they had the belt around Chris Jericho. He ended up beating The Rock and retaining his title, and it was one of many pay-per-views I just had to have every single Sunday with the guys, $35, $40 a pop, whatever it was back then. And it was like that every Sunday. And I don't know, I was still down and out about my behavior with women and stuff when I was drinking too much. I had started drinking a little hard stuff a little bit too often. I wasn't very happy with my behavior at all. So I started feeling remorse for my actions in these blackouts, and I definitely saw a change in my drinking since I'd quit the phone company. I was at this point, I believe I was chemically dependent on booze, and I was so pathetic. I remember there was this one girl, I won't say her name, but we had a thing going for about 4 years, and it was just sexual hookups and stuff. And my sorry ass called her up on Valentine's Day. I think it was on a Thursday or Friday that year. And she goes, "I knew you were going to call me," And she comes over, and we had a romantic evening at a WWE SmackDown and some booze. And I fixed her. And, I remember after she left, I think that was the last time after all those years, as far as I know. But actually, no, it wasn't. I'll get into that later. It wasn't. Anyway, so these the days were coming to an end, and I didn't really realize it. But I remember what really triggered the change was I remember me and Luca and Mark Borgella were drinking at my house in Colma, and we had some what was that called? The 151. And I jokingly said to Mark, I said, "The last time I drank this, I got arrested." I was like 16. I think I was drinking with Eddie Valencia back then. He introduced me to it when we were youngsters. And I got the police showed up, and I was like talking shit. And we were at the Mooney's house that day or that night. And anyway, things went down, and my mouth got in the way with the 151. But I had like at least 3 to 4 151 and Cokes. And we hopped in my car. I was driving my new Camry that I bought. It was a 98 Camry. And we head down to my sister's apartment in San Bruno. And she was living with Kelly and Christy at the time. And they were having a house party at the apartment. So we hung out and we listened to some music. Had a few laughs, whatever. And I continued to have a few beers. And then it was time to go home. And I remember Luca didn't get in the car, but my two roommates were in the back seat, and I think Mark was in the front seat. And we took off, and we're going up Acacia Avenue in San Bruno, which is right by El Crystal School, for any of you guys who know San Bruno very well. It's very narrow streets. And I remember I was trying to play Real American, which is Hulk Hogan's theme song from the 80s, on my CD player. And I hit play, and I was messing around, and I wasn't looking at the road, and I hit a parked truck, and we flipped upside down in my Camry in a residential. And I didn't see it happen, but I remember all of us were hanging like we're on a roller coaster at Great America by the harnesses, and our arms are dangling down. And I'm like, oh man, I really did it this time, right? So the song was still playing. The car is on its top, and we climbed out, and I saw my wheel rolling down the hill, down on Acacia Avenue, and these guys all just ran and took off. I think they had marijuana on them. It wasn't legal back then. This is 20 years ago. And the neighbors are all running out. It's like 1:30 in the morning, right? So they hear this huge crash, this noise, and apparently this is like the 5th time that this guy's truck had gotten hit for sticking out too far or whatever. But this time I totaled his car and mine. Cops come, and they asked me how fast I was going. I couldn't really give them an answer. I said, 25. The guy goes, bullshit. And so they breathalyzed me, and I guess the first try I didn't really go through, and the cops yelling at me, blow harder, don't give me that bullshit. He's yelling. So needless to say, I got taken away, and my car got towed away after they flipped it back on the side or whatever they did, and I went to First Chance yet again. And I remember the car getting towed to the driveway. It was just wiped out, and my roommates were like, this looks like shit, get this thing out of here. I said I had nowhere to put it. So I had to wait for the appraiser to come and call it a total loss so I get my check. But anyway, so I remember my birthday was coming up shortly after. And my roommate at the time, this guy Scott, at this point, if you guys remember, I was living with Kevin Shea and a couple other guys. Well, his birthday was the same as mine. So we had like a going away bash duo, birthday celebration. And it was like a going away party, I guess. So I had an opportunity to move back to Millbrae with my buddy Luca. And nothing says responsibility like Luca Cingolani and Dan the Man Banchero living together. So Kevin Ritzman joined us. And that was quite a scene, So we had people over constantly stopping in, and we're playing poker, we're playing Pedro, and there's a lot of arguments and sometimes some fist fights. And Luca would constantly, make it known that he was in charge of the house because he had lived there for the longest, and his dad knows the landlord, blah, 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 blah. And he had no respect for any of us when we wanted to go to sleep. He would blare Peter Frampton and Sublime and the Police, full bore, like so loud it had to have been heard by the other neighbors. He had the bass going, smoking cigarettes in the kitchen, in the living room, no regard for anybody, pissed off. And I'd sit there and tolerate it. And anyway, it was just, we'd play pranks on him, to get him worked up and shit. Somebody went out and took a shit on the top of his car one day, and he came home. There's this big log on the top of the car. I can't remember who it was. He was irate. And then something happened where the front bush got caught on fire somehow, some fireworks or something. And the fire department's out there trying to put it out. It was just a total nightmare. And furniture is constantly getting flipped over, stains on the rugs. Just it was nuts, and I'm getting up to go, walk down to work at Leonardo's Deli, and I still had a '77 Cadillac DeVille that I would drive once in a while. I bought it off of Rhett Butler, I think I got it through my sister's boyfriend at the time, Nick Viviani. So I still had my 77 DeVille, but I had no license at this point. So I didn't always test the waters, but I remember I'd get up to go to work, and then Luke would get up to go to work, and he'd have his hair all over the place, unshaven, red in the face, throw his shades on, smoke hanging off his lip. He'd speed off with his collar all screwed up to go work in Chevys. And we'd rip each other and just talk shit. It was so fun. Just get under each other's skin. But I remember Dimitri came back on the scene at Leonardo's, and he started hanging out with us too. And me and Dimitri and Luca, we were taking classes together up at Skyline. And lo and behold, the great Frank Damon from Mills High School was doing a political science class during the summertime. So the three of us are going up there, and we're in this class, and nothing's changed. You had Frank Damon in high school. It was crazy, even in 2002. And in previous episodes, this was not the last time he saw me. So I made it through that whole class, and I remember we'd go up to the parking lot, and Luke and Dimitri would be drinking out in my car, and I didn't drink, but I'd drive us home. And at this point in this year, I put all this weight back on after losing a bunch of weight. And there was this girl who would come into the deli, and she was 37, and I was 22 at the time. Her name was Kelly. She had red hair, and she worked out at the same gym I worked out at, but she'd come in the deli, and she was very promiscuous, let's say. And we ended up starting to hook up. She pursued me for some sick reason. I really didn't know, but I was all in. My first older woman, really. And well, one of the first. But at any rate, she was a lot older than me. And she'd take me out to all these fancy restaurants in Burlingame, and she'd pay. And then we'd go back to my house, and she'd be all coked out or something and drinking. And I'd fix her, and she'd call me to deli and talk dirty. And this is before I had a cell phone, And it was just nuts. It was just crazy. So I was on top of the world with that. But I remember I had to start doing community service at Central Park in Millbrae. So I only had to do 5 days for this DUI. I got off really easy for some reason. So I'm doing community service, and so sometimes locals would see me with an orange vest, and I'm like, "Oh, Dan, you ain't working at the deli anymore? You got a new job?" I'm like, No. I just got popped again. Just got another Dewey, and it was embarrassing, but it was only 5 days. But I started drinking a lot of whiskey and Jim Beam, and just Jack and Coke sometimes, or I don't know. It was just my drinking escalated, and I was getting fucked up a lot quicker. I just I don't know. I'm going. Somehow I'd finished a class. I finished humanities or something like that at Skyline the previous semester. It was just pathetic. I was going to work, and I remember I didn't like asking for rides from people. So I would fill up a shopping cart like once every couple of weeks, and I kind of did for exercise too. But I'd fill up the shopping cart, and I'd walk from Safeway in Millbrae all the way up by Cappuccino, all the way up to we lived on Juanita, which is past Cappuccino High School. And it took quite a while. Sometimes it was a bitch going up the hills, but I had too much pride to ask for rides, and I just wanted to take care of myself. And once in a while, Kevin Richmond picked me up from DUI class, which was on Grand Avenue in South City, which was nice back in the time. Because this is back in the days when we would like hit people up for gas money. We were young, and he'd come pick me up on the corner for my DUI class, and I'd be walking out of the liquor store with an 18-pack of Budweiser ready to go. And nothing was changing at all. I still didn't see the extent of my drinking. And I remember I had a gambling issue too. I loved to gamble back then. I liked to bet on football and basketball. And I went up to Reno. And I think I told you in the last episode of the timeline, at least, my cousin Jamie from Utah came with her friend Astra, and we had gone to Reno and stuff. And at some point, I found this Wheel of Fortune machine at the Sands Hotel in Reno. And it was a $5 pull, but I do the double down. It was like a $10 pull, and I just got hooked on it. And I remember the first time I got hooked on it, I won $2,000. I was like all excited, right? So 5 weeks in a row, on Tuesday mornings, I would walk down to the bus stop at ECR. I think it was called the 390 back then. And I take it, and this is before Millbrae BART and San Bernardino BART, were even around. And I take the BART, or I take the ECR to the BART station in Colma, and I take the Colma BART over to the Coliseum BART, and I fly from Southwest in Oakland to Reno. I go play for a couple hours, and then 5 weeks in a row, I won over $2,000. And then the last week, the first 4 weeks, I won over $2,000. The last week, I lost $1,400. I wouldn't tell Luca where I was going. Everybody else knew, and Luca thought that I was upset about my dog Deuce dying, and he thought that I was like tripping out or something and going to Santa Rosa to see my mom or something. And I didn't tell him the secret for a long time. But I remember I paid off like $7,500 of my credit cards through this, right? So I got something accomplished. But when I got my ass kicked that last time, I stopped going. But that was an ongoing thing where everybody knew that I was going. And I'd fly home. I deposit the money that I won at the Wells Fargo. I go back to the airport and buy a ticket and fly back after just a couple hours. I just do that on Tuesdays. It was really weird. But yeah, it was a year full of laughs. I remember St. Patrick's Day. I was so excited that the NWO had showed up in WWE, and Hollywood Hogan was facing The Rock at WrestleMania, and WrestleMania fell on St. Patrick's Day that year. And I really, really wanted to see it. And we didn't have pay-per-view capability or something. I can't remember what happened, but the Bakers had invited me over for St. Patrick's Day dinner. So they got the corned beef and the cabbage going. They had the whole family over, the troops. And Denise offered to pay the $50 for WrestleMania for me. I'll never forget. It was one of the nicest things anybody ever done for me. And I'm in the room, by myself, and Joe's coming in once in a while to check on me and watch a couple matches with me, and they were yucking it up, and I'm watching the show, and I just had a great time. Stone Cold fought Scott Hall, and Triple H won the belt from Jericho. It was just a great time, man. It was really cool that happened. I was a young guy, it was just a nice thing that somebody did for me. And I remember that year we had made another trip to Berryessa for Memorial Day. And that's when I really got reconnected with Eddie Pinellas after several years of not seeing him. And that's when me and Jen Gerhardt kind of got to know each other for the first time. Now we've been friends for 20 years. And I'm out there, and we're doing mushrooms, we're drinking, we're playing all the drinking games, and I'm doing keg laps and doing flops on the beach, and we're playing up the river, down the river, and kings, and all these other silly games we used to play to get loaded. And some people are snorting coke and doing acid and smoking dope, and it was just a great time, man. We'd eat and we'd laugh, and we'd play games like I Never, and they'd always pick me. They'd always say things that they knew that I did that were no longer a secret, and I'd have to stand up and just goofy shit. I was a fun guy to play those games with. I was always the punching bag, but I took it pretty good. I remember going to DUI class. It was like it was a trip because this man came in to share. I couldn't remember if he was representing Alcoholics Anonymous, trying to help people with DUIs, considering getting sober, considering that maybe they got the DUI because they have a problem with drinking. And he was a big guy. I think his name was Bob. But he was talking to me. I remember he shared about his son hanging himself. And then years later, I finally got to AA, and this man looked familiar. And then I heard about the hanging in his share, and I go, I bet you this is the guy that spoke at my DUI class years ago. And I'm pretty sure it was. But he was like, that was the almost like one of the seeds that were planted about AA. And I don't know, he was just it was nuts. Lenny from Leonardo is my boss, Gary's dad, and Michelle's dad, he retired that year and moved away, and I was really sad. I was pretty upset. I think Grandpa Sam had passed away that year, and I remember being at Grandpa Sam's funeral, and I don't know, it's like losing a family member, And then Lenny kind of stepped in as my dad as a while there for that 5-year period that I got to work with him, and we just had a ball. I mean, it was just great. Almost every holiday, if my mom wasn't working, or if my mom was working or something, I'd be with the Brontes, and I was really sad. I remember Lenny shook my hand and said thank you, and basically like good luck. And I probably could have really needed him around for another couple of years, but it's just the way it went. He moved away up to Lincoln, and just funny stuff going there at the deli for all those years. I really should just do a whole episode on 17 years of that deli. It was so nuts. And then the Giants went to the World Series that year, and I remember I was jealous because the A's had gotten knocked out. And I was so mad. It's like I was disgusted because Giambi had left that year and was on the Yankees, and the Giants went, and I love Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds is like one of my favorite players of all time to watch. But I couldn't stand the Angels, but for some reason I really did think the Angels were going to win. I remember having a $100 bet with Danny DeFilippis, and he was off. We were talking shit over the phone, and I went over to Kenny Wardell's house that year to watch the game. And all I remember is that the Giants blew the lead. It might have been that one game where they pulled Ortiz too early. And all I remember is that I was on the phone with Danny, and I raised my fist in the air when the Angels took the lead. And all of a sudden, I feel this can hit the back of my head, and this beer is splattering all the back of my head. And Kenny threw a can of beer at my head. He was all mad. But boys will be boys. I just, man, what a life it's been. It's a shame, I'm watching all my friends have a hard time staying clean from all substances, and I got close people in my life that were roommates or are roommates who are going out, and it's tough to watch. It doesn't matter what they're using. Some of them might not even have a problem like I do. All I know is that if you're living in a clean and sober house, somebody's not approving of your using. That's all I know for sure. You're probably a burden to somebody else if you end up in a home with other addicts or alcoholics or whatever we are. No matter what age you're in, I'm just thinking back when I do these episodes, and now I'm going back 20 years to when I was in my early 20s, and I'm just trying to imagine myself even fathoming getting the humility to want to stop, because I didn't want to stop. I was having too much fun. I didn't care what the consequences were. And then, like many of you know, in the upcoming episodes, I'll get to when I got the inheritance from my family, and it was just the timing was terrible. But it's maybe the man that I am today for losing all that. But now through this process, I'm very much in position to get all that back. But what are numbers? I'm a better man than I used to be. That's all I know for sure. And I don't know. I'm having a good time reminiscing. I get a lot of time on the road sometimes, and I'll be listening to some songs. And the other day I was coming back from Portola Valley, and I had an urge to turn on 90s alternative rock. And I started hearing some of these songs and thinking about the people I used to hang out with at each time period. And I started tearing up. I started thinking about my upcoming wedding in July and being able to reunite with some of you. And I can't believe what's happened the last 5 years. I can't believe the people I've met and what I've gotten to do. And this show's been a part of it. I know it sounds crazy, but when I get just to sit and talk, and whoever's listening is listening, it's fun to, think about all these crazy times and the people I lived with. And I remember I'd be home wiped out, and I'd take a nap sometimes, like in the middle of the afternoon, because the night before I'd be too screwed up, and I'd be laying on the floor. I was doing this thing where I'd lay on the floor because I heard it was good for your back, so I slept on the floor instead of on a bed or a couch or anything. And I hear voices right outside my window, and I look outside, and there's Mike Haldezos and Ellen Messina just smoking away outside of my window. They just went ahead and made themselves through the back fences, decided to come in that way. And it's just funny stuff. I love it. I love all these people, man. I've gotten to meet the most interesting people over the years and just watch some funny ass stuff go on. And now I got this new job, and there's all these cast of characters on the sales team, and I'm in the middle of the chaos. And sometimes I'm like the moderator to calm everybody down. It's pretty funny. It's like, what else you got? Who else are you going to bring my way? I don't know anybody else who gets to live like this. I'm not, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. It's just very unique. It's not like royalty or better than. It's just very unique, and you gotta be here to believe it sometimes. If you're one of my peers and you watch this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But some of my friends, what I've gotten to learn in the last few years is that relationships change because circumstances in life, things change. And I used to feel like things were happening to me when friends of mine would move away or whatever. But really what it was is that I was paralyzed by my addiction. And I would just sit around and just talk about things I wanted to do. So now it's like, I never lost the friendships. It just, living situations changed, jobs changed, their relationships changed, whether they're having kids or getting married or, whatever it is. And that's all this is about. That's all recovery is about. Because, we talk about the 12 steps. And it's not just a one-time shot for a guy like me, because my adversity will change. My jobs will change. Those relationships will change. My friends will change because people move away and new people come into my life. And there's a constant adversity and new challenges and new personalities. And I got to be prepared for it. And the only way I know how to do it is by the 12 steps. And I got a new sponsor. And I did step one the other night with him. We sat there for 2 hours in his car in the Home Depot parking lot, and we just chopped it up. And, it's just, it's a good life, man. It's a good life for anybody. So if you're struggling, if you're having a hard time, please hit me up on Messenger or Instagram, or if you got my phone number, text me. And let's chat. I can make a few recommendations, and it's just my goal to help people feel a little bit better, because so many people did it for me. And, now life's just a blast. Hence my $5 ball cap and my Angus Young t-shirt. Getting to be here for my mother with my bride-to-be. Anyway, you'll have a good night, and we'll catch you next time on the Dan Banchero Show, only on YouTube. Here's to feeling good all the time.